You know, some objects, they just hold more than their material value, right? They carry stories. And today we're diving into the really chilling tale of an antique knife, one whose story seems to be written, literally, in blood.
Okay, so we're actually going to start this story at the end, with this one sentence from the guy who sold the knife. I'm starting to think that it's cursed or something. Wow. I mean, that one line just hangs in the air, doesn't it? It frames everything we're about to look at. What on earth could happen to make a seasoned antique dealer, a guy who's seen it all, think that something in his own shop was actually cursed?
All right, so let's meet our main character. His name is Bill Miller, and he's a collector. The whole thing kicks off during what should have been just a normal, routine visit to a place called the Magic Carpet Antique and Collectible Shop. But on this particular day, he stumbles upon something that just immediately grabs his attention.
So what is this thing? Well, it's this ornate 8-inch long knife. It's got this really cool, beautifully decorated metal sheath with this kind of opalescent finish. And to a guy like Bill, a seasoned collector, it just screams sacrificial knife. But he's got his own theory about what it really is.
And right off the bat, we've got a bit of a disagreement. See, Bill, with all his experience, he's pretty sure it's a replica, probably made in the 60s. But the shopkeeper, a guy named Stanley, he's not having it. He's totally adamant, saying, no, this is the real deal. It's genuinely over 100 years old. He even has a backstory for it. Says he bought it from an elderly Pakistani man whose father had passed it down to him.
So even though Bill's a little skeptical, the collector in him is doing the math. If, and it's a big if the shopkeeper is right, this thing could be worth over $2,000. So he does what any good collector would do. He haggles. He gets the price down to $250. Now, think about that. A potential 800% profit? That's too good to walk away from, right?
So, Bill takes his new prize and heads for home. He lives out in this remote cabin near Lake Simons, the perfect, quiet spot to really sit down and examine his new find. But as soon as he gets there, that feeling of getting a great bargain, it starts to change. It starts to feel a lot more like a birding.
Okay, picture this. He sits down at his kitchen table, takes the knife out of the paper bag it came in, and pulls the blade from the sheath, and he just stops. He does a total double take. I mean, he literally rubs his eyes thinking he can't be seeing this right, because completely inexplicably, the blade is covered in what looks exactly like fresh blood. He is just completely and utterly mystified.
So Bill does what pretty much any of us would do, right? He tries to be rational about it. He's thinking, okay, I must have missed something at the shop. So he takes the knife over to the sink, washes the whole blade off under hot water, dries it really carefully, and then sets it on the table. His plan is to come back and give it a proper oil and wax treatment, to preserve it.
So he pops out to the garage just to grab his cleaning supplies. He's gone for maybe, a couple of minutes? But when he comes back inside, this already strange situation it completely escalates. We're talking something straight out of a horror movie.
Yeah, things get weird fast. So first, it was just some blood on the blade. He cleans that. But now a small puddle of blood has formed underneath the sheath, right there on his table. So he cleans it again, this time even more thoroughly. He's probably thinking, okay, that has to be it. But nope, he comes back to find a fresh pool of blood. And this time when he picks the knife up, some of the liquid drips on his hand. And it burns, an intense burning sensation.
And here's where it gets even creepier. It wasn't just Bill noticing this stuff. His dog, Freddie, had been totally calm this whole time. But now, all of a sudden, he starts barking furiously at the knife just sitting there on the table. He gets more and more agitated, just losing his mind, almost to the point of having a fit. It's like the dog senses something is deeply, deeply wrong. And that's a chilling kind of validation, It's not just in Bill's head.
So this brings us to the million-dollar question. Where in the world could this blood possibly be coming from? I mean, Bill's trying to rationalize it. Could it be some kind of red cleaning fluid? Was there maybe blood trapped way deep inside the sheath that I missed? But come on, he'd cleaned it twice, and really thoroughly. And when you add in the burning liquid and the dog's insane reaction, well, a simple, rational explanation is getting harder and harder to find.
You gotta remember, Bill is 74 years old, and the strain of all this is it's getting to be too much. He's feeling tired, kind of woozy, and just totally confused. So he decides, I just need to lie down for a nap. He's probably wondering if this is all just some bizarre hallucination. But what happens next? Well, it suggests that whatever's going on with this knife, it goes way beyond the physical world. So Bill falls into this really deep sleep and he starts to dream. But this isn't a normal dream. He's suddenly in a completely different time, a different place. He finds himself standing inside what looks like an ancient palace, surrounded by all these old tapestries and ornate furniture. He looks down at himself and he's wearing this traditional clothing, something from an Eastern culture, maybe India or Pakistan.
And then, suddenly, this tall, really tough-looking man walks into the room. Bill has no idea who this guy is, but he can see the look on his face. It is just pure, unfiltered anger. In an instant, instinctual fear just washes over Bill. You know that deep in your gut feeling that something is very, very wrong?
The man starts walking closer. He reaches under his robe, and he pulls out a weapon. And to Bill's absolute stomach-dropping horror, it's the knife. It is the exact same ornate knife that in the real world is sitting out in his garage right now. This is the moment his nightmare and his reality just violently collide.
Everything seems to go into slow motion. The man shouts something at him in a language Bill can't understand. He raises the knife high above his head and he brings it down. Bill throws up his arms, tries to block the blow, but the guy is just too strong. He feels the blade sink deep into his chest, and the last thing he sees is the angry face of his attacker.
Bill jolts awake. His heart is pounding. His dog Freddy is there, licking his hand. The nightmare was so vivid, so terrifyingly real, that for a second he's sure it actually happened. And that's it. That's the last straw. He's had enough. He marches straight out to the garage, grabs that knife, and decides it cannot stay in his house for one more minute. He immediately gets on the phone and calls the antique shop. And he does not mince words. He tells the owner, "Stanley, I think there's something wrong with your knife, and I don't want it in my house." He demands a full refund. And surprisingly, Stanley agrees. Just like that. No fight, no argument.
But this is where the story takes its final, absolutely jaw-dropping twist. After Stanley hangs up the phone, a woman who's in the shop, Marge, asks him what all that was about. And Stanley tells her that Bill is the fourth person to buy that exact knife and then return it with some kind of bizarre, unbelievable story.
So now we're left with two totally competing explanations. On one hand, you have the shopkeeper, Stanley. After seeing this exact same pattern play out 4 different times, he's starting to lean towards the supernatural. He's the one who says, "I'm starting to think that it's cursed or something." But on the other hand, you've got Marge. She's a much more, cynical take on it. She basically says, the world's full of nuts these days. That's what's wrong with the knife. It's not the knife, it's the people.
And that, right there, is where this whole story leaves us. Is this ornate knife truly cursed? Did Bill Miller somehow tap into a psychic echo from its violent past? Or is there a simpler explanation? Was he just a suggestible older man whose own mind cooked up a terrifying hallucination? The story gives us no easy answers, which means we have to decide for ourselves. What do you think?